Welcome back to Boss Economics World, where we take the economic clown show and break it down so even your goldfish can understand why the world's on fire. I'm your host, the guy who's been screaming into the void about government mismanagement since the Great Recession, and boy, oh boy, do we have a spicy one today. You see that dumpster fire over there? That's the global economy, courtesy of Donald Trump's latest brainchild, reciprocal tariffs so high they make Mount Everest look like a speed bump. 104% tariffs on China. 49% on Cambodia. 46% on Vietnam. And a casual 20% on the EU, because why not alienate your allies while you're at it? If you thought the government couldn't possibly make the economy worse, congratulations, you've underestimated the chaos machine that is Washington, D.C. So, buckle up, grab your popcorn, or your pitchforks, depending on how much of your 401k just evaporated, and let's dive into this economic horror show, from the surface-level madness to the deep, dark, government-induced rot underneath. Spoiler alert, it's not gonna be great for us, no matter what Trump says. Let's start with the obvious. Trump's tariffs are a sledgehammer to the face of global trade. As of April 9, 2025, the man who brought you The Art of the Deal decided the art of economics is just slapping triple-digit tariffs on everyone who dares to have a trade surplus with the US. China's now facing a whopping 104% tariff, which includes a 50% because I feel like it duty tacked on after Beijing dared to whisper about retaliating. Asian nations like Cambodia and Vietnam. They're getting hit with 49% and 46%, respectively, because apparently, making affordable t-shirts is now an act of economic warfare. And the EU? A cool 20%, just enough to make sure your next BMW costs as much as a small yacht. Now, Trump's out there, chest puffed out, saying, the money is pouring in at a level we've never seen before. Oh, really, Don? Let's talk about where that money's actually going. According to the Peterson Institute for International Economics, Trump's tariffs from his first term already cost American consumers $40 billion a year in higher prices. And that was with tariffs averaging just 19%. Now, with tariffs as high as 104%, Goldman Sachs estimates that U.S. consumer prices could spike by 4 to 5% across the board in 2025 alone. That's right, folks, your groceries, your clothes, your electronics. All more expensive, because apparently, the government thinks inflation wasn't high enough already. And let's not forget the markets. On April 9, 2025, the day these tariffs kicked in, Asian shares tanked for the fourth time in 5 days, and U.S. Treasuries? Oh, they're selling off faster than a clearance sale at a bankrupt mall. The 30-year Treasury yield soared past 4.98%, a level we haven't seen since the Federal Reserve was panic hiking rates to fight inflation in 2023. Higher yields mean higher borrowing costs, which means businesses invest less, hire less, and, surprise, lay off more. But hey, Trump says it's going to be great for us, so I guess we're all just imagining the economic tsunami headed our way, right? Now, let's peel back the layers of this onion of incompetence and see how the government's fingerprints are all over this economic train wreck. First off, this isn't just Trump's ego trip, though, let's be real, it's a big part of it. This is the culmination of decades of government mismanagement, pandering, and outright economic illiteracy. Take the trade deficit, Trump's favorite boogeyman. He's out there screaming about how countries like China, Vietnam, and South Korea are ripping us off with their trade surpluses. But here's the dirty little secret, the U.S. trade deficit isn't their fault, it's ours. According to the Bureau of Economic Analysis, the U.S. trade deficit hit $1.03 trillion in 2024, the highest in over a decade. Why? Because the government's been running budget deficits like a teenager with a stolen credit card. The Congressional Budget Office projects a $1.9 trillion federal deficit in 2025, fueled by tax cuts, military spending, and zero fiscal discipline. Now, here's the economics 101 lesson Trump clearly skipped. When you run massive budget deficits, you suck in imports to fuel your spending spree, and you export dollars, which other countries happily use to sell us more stuff. The trade deficit is just the mirror image of the government's fiscal irresponsibility. But instead of fixing that, Trump's solution is to slap tariffs on everyone, which is like treating a broken leg with a band-aid made of razor blades. And let's talk about the retaliation. China, Canada, the EU, they're not just sitting there taking it. Canada's already hit back with 25% counter tariffs on U.S. auto exports, which, by the way, employ over 800,000 American workers, according to the American Automotive Policy Council. The EU's gearing up for a tougher response, and China's Li Qiang is out there saying they've got ample policy tools to fight back. Spoiler alert, those tools include targeting U.S. exports like soybeans, which cost American farmers $14 billion in lost sales during Trump's first trade war, per the U.S. Department of Agriculture. But hey, maybe Trump's right, maybe this will revive domestic manufacturing. Except, oops, it didn't last time. According to the Federal Reserve, U.S. manufacturing output actually declined by 1.3% during Trump's first term, despite his tariffs. Why? Because modern supply chains are global, not national. You can't just slap a tariff on Chinese steel and expect a factory to pop up in Ohio overnight. Instead, you get businesses passing on higher costs to consumers, or worse, going bankrupt because they can't compete. Just ask Harley-Davidson, which had to move production overseas after the EU retaliated against Trump's steel tariffs in 2018. Now, let's zoom out and look at the big picture, because this isn't just about tariffs, this is about a government so drunk on power and so clueless about economics that it's practically begging for a recession. First, let's talk inflation. The U.S. inflation rate was already hovering around 3.5% in early 2025, according to the Bureau of Labor Statistics, thanks to lingering supply chain issues and the Fed's tightrope walk on interest rates. Now, with tariffs jacking up the cost of imports, Oxford Economics predicts inflation could hit 6% by the end of 2025. That's not just a number, that's higher mortgage rates, higher car payments, and higher grocery bills for every single American. And what's the government's plan to fight this? More tariffs, apparently, because nothing screams inflation control like making everything more expensive. Next, let's talk jobs. Trump's out there promising a manufacturing renaissance, but here's the cold, hard truth, tariffs don't create jobs, they destroy them. The National Bureau of Economic Research found that Trump's first-round tariffs cost the U.S. 142,000 jobs by 2020, mostly in retail, construction, and agriculture, as higher costs rippled through the economy. This time, with tariffs even higher, Moody's Analytics estimates a potential loss of 400,000 jobs by mid-2026, with small businesses, already battered by inflation and high interest rates, taking the biggest hit. And then there's the risk of a full-blown trade war. Remember the Smoot-Hawley Tariff Act of 1930? That little gem raised tariffs to record levels, triggered global retaliation, and turned a bad recession into the Great Depression. According to the World Trade Organization, global trade volumes already shrank by 1.2% in 2024, the first decline in over a decade, thanks to rising protectionism. Trump's latest stunt could slash global trade by another 5%, per the International Monetary Fund, pushing the world economy into a synchronized slowdown, or worse, a recession. But here's the kicker, the government doesn't care. Why? Because this isn't about economics, it's about politics. Trump's out there promising a thundering landslide in the 2026 midterms, banking on the idea that voters will blame China, or the EU, or anyone but him for the economic pain. And the sad part? It might work. According to a 2025 Gallup poll, 62% of Americans still believe tariffs protect U.S. jobs, despite all evidence to the contrary. That's the power of government propaganda, folks, convincing you that the guy setting your house on fire is actually your firefighter. So, what's the takeaway from this economic horror show? First, Trump's tariffs aren't saving the economy, they're tanking it. Higher prices, fewer jobs, and a looming recession, all courtesy of a government that thinks trade war is a winning strategy. Second, this isn't just Trump's fault, it's the fault of a system that spent decades prioritizing political theater over economic reality. And third, you, the average American, are the one who's going to pay the price, whether it's at the grocery store, the gas pump, or your shrinking retirement fund. But here's the good news, you don't have to just sit there and take it. Start asking questions. Why is the government running trillion-dollar deficits and then blaming China for the fallout? Why are we fighting inflation with policies that make things more expensive? And why, oh why, do we keep electing people who think economics is just a game of who can yell the loudest? This is Boss Economics World, where we don't just complain, we demand better. So, hit that like button, share this video with your financially frustrated friends, and let's start a conversation that Washington can't ignore. Until next time, keep your wallets close and your government skepticism closer. Peace out.